Ah. Oh, right. All right. Let's also watch this.
Rewards to his loyal followers. I will show you irrefutable evidence in a minute that his videos are in fact fake.
The videos went viral, pulling millions of views and sparking heated debates about whether Mr. Beast's entire image was fake. He's what too good to be true would be if it were a person. Another added, evil Mr. Beast was real all along. But that spotlight wouldn't last long, because another creator named Soggy Cereal decided to dig deeper, and what he found completely tore Dogpack's claims apart.
In this video, I will be debunking close to every accusation he and the people he manipulated have made.
Most of the evidence Dogpack presented was either edited out of context.
Throughout this video, you'll also see that there are multiple examples of him leaving out crucial details from evidence that would easily disprove the accusations he's making. Because Dawson loves framing things deceitfully to push his personal agenda.
Or straight up fake.
This pit is fake.
No, it's not. Here's footage of them digging the pit.
CGI.
Nope. At this timestamp, they do shred an actual Lamborghini in a legitimate shred.
Oh, I got
Car is digitally
67.
lifted.
This car isn't digitally lifted, however they did change the original red coloring to blue to make a visual distinction between the first rocket car they launched and failed, which was red, and the second one they launched, which succeeded but was also red.
For instance, some of the screenshots that Dogpack showed in his videos didn't match the original uploads, deliberately edited to make Mr. Beast look bad.
You can see that the UI for the illegal live stream is not the real YouTube UI. Instead of rounded corners, they're sharp, the likes are gone, the upload date is in a completely wrong spot where it has never been, and the button sizes and title fonts just seem off.
Seeing Dogpack for who he really was, the internet turned on him, with people leaving comments like, "I blindly believe the dog guy," without actually fact-checking anything. But as they always say, the moment you believe you can't be scammed is probably the moment it will happen. And Dogpack was literally all bark and no bite. Soon after, more creators started joining in, showing clear evidence of his manipulation and false claims. And just like that, the videos that were supposed to make his career now sit like sour milk aged badly in the sun. After Dogpack 404's expose collapsed under his own lies, PewDiePie's story showed that sometimes a video can age badly just because of one careless moment. PewDiePie had a long-running series called Stream Fails, a compilation format where he'd react to funny or awkward live stream moments from other creators. Fans loved it and saw it as funny and entertaining. Ironically, in one of those very compilations, PewDiePie once lightly joked that he'd never find himself in a stream fail.
It doesn't matter if it's one frame, okay? One frame you fuck up, it's on the internet forever, and you're gonna get shit for it. Now, I have never made that mistake before. I would never be that stupid.
But that statement wouldn't age well, because during a live stream of playing PUBG, PewDiePie ended up saying a racial slur
Oh, there it is.
expressing frustration after being eliminated at the infamous bridge.
What a fucking jeez, oh my god, what the fuck?
Oh no, I'm
The
gonna
clip spread fast, sparking an
no.
immediate reaction from the audience. Fans who had celebrated his humor started making fun of him and leaving comments like, "Hughes hasn't been in a stream fail compilation yet, guess he'll cross that bridge when he comes to it." And little did Hughes know, he would later be in these compilations. As a result, Campo Santo, the developer of Firewatch, announced they would file DMCA takedown notices against his videos featuring their game because of the slur. PewDiePie responded publicly by posting an apology, calling himself just an idiot,
I'm just an idiot.
and admitting that there were no excuses for his actions.
It was something that I said in the heat of the moment.
Oh
I said the worst word I could possibly think of, and it just sort of slipped out. And I'm not gonna make any excuses to why it did, because there are no excuses for it.
He later took steps to distance himself from social media drama, deactivating his Twitter account and unfollowing everyone who he had been following. Despite the backlash, his career did not end. The bridge incident showed everyone how fast people can change their minds. And while PewDiePie's mistake happened in the heat of the moment,
Oh. Whoops. And I'm dead.
Arak's story was the complete opposite, carefully planned and built on deception. In late 2023, Eric embarked on an ambitious project, a 30-day global challenge where he promised to upload a new video every day. The stakes were high because if he failed, Mr. Beast would delete Eric's channel completely.
I have 30 days to make it around the earth, upload a video on this channel every day for the next 30 days, and if I fail, he will delete my channel. Yeah, I gave Jimmy my laptop here. He has full control. The good news is, I won't be missing an upload.
Something that added pressure and intrigue to the challenge. One of the standout videos in this series was titled, "I Crossed Ireland in a Perfectly Straight Line," documenting the journey in real time. The video showcased various obstacles, interactions with locals, and the challenges of maintaining a straight path across diverse terrains.
Now, if at any point I step outside of this line, it's over. I'm done. So for every obstacle that comes my way, I have to find a way to stay on this line. Mountains, oceans, angry locals. I will either end this video in Italy or die on this line, figuratively.
This story felt real, promising, and like a real adventure. However, the authenticity of this journey came into question when Soggy Cereal conducted a detailed analysis, eventually revealing that the video was fake.
But it's completely fake. I was excitingly waiting for the very first upload. Woo! Shit. Until 3 minutes into the first episode where the cracks already started to show.
For instance, Eric seemed to be driving through the streets of Ireland in this stream,
No.
but Soggy saw something odd. The Irish
I will
parade in the background
maybe.
wasn't part of his actual
No,
trip at
no,
all,
I don't know.
and instead turned out
Bruh.
to be footage from a St. Patrick's Day
Who
celebration.
says that is the
Dublin,
first
repurposed
comment
to
in
make
the
it seem like he
streamer's
was there
chat,
in the moment.
bruh?
This? Well, this is the Dublin
It's an
Services
embarrassment.
which happened on September 2nd. And then if you go to episode 3 and pause right here, you can clearly see the 12th September timestamp on his watch. Maybe his watch was just malfunctioning.
This discovery shocked his entire fanbase and made the video age terribly. But crucially, this video opened cracks that would later reveal that the
Mr.
entire 30-day
Me.
challenge had been staged and
I'm
pre-recorded,
watching-
betraying the show's promise of being authentic.
Never mind.
Fans felt deceived, and the backlash was intense. Creators also voiced their frustration, making their own videos calling out Eric. In response, Eric attempted to clarify his intentions through a comment, stating that some of the episodes were shot before the series, so they could get a head start to edit and make the videos as good as possible. However, the damage to his credibility was already done, making his entire series a prime example of YouTube videos that aged like milk. But while Eric's video aged because of his deceptions, the next one completely fell apart because of misplaced praise. In late 2022, Nas Daily introduced Sam Bankman-Fried as the most generous billionaire, describing him as a visionary in the crypto world.
The guy you see next to me is the most generous billionaire in the world, and he wants to donate all of it to charity.
At the time, fans were captivated by the story, as this was the kind of positive, uplifting content that made Nas Daily famous. But less than a year later, everything unraveled. FTX, the cryptocurrency exchange founded by Sam Bankman-Fried, collapsed spectacularly after it was revealed that he used his other company, Alameda Research, to steal billions from FTX customers.
Sam Bankman-Fried created an elaborate fraud using two companies. FTX, where customers could go deposit their money, and Alameda Research, which then stole that money from FTX. Alameda Research got special privileges which they used to steal the customer's money,
leaving an $8 billion hole in its accounts. Sam was arrested and later convicted on multiple fraud charges, including wire fraud and conspiracy. The very person Nas had celebrated as the most generous billionaire turned out to have orchestrated one of the largest financial scandals in recent history. In hindsight, the video now feels wildly out of touch, with fans leaving comments like "this aged well" and "the most hungry billionaire." But not every video ages badly because of a scandal. Sometimes it's just because the creator got the story completely wrong, and that's exactly what happened with Sunny V2 and iNabber. In early September 2024, Nikocado Avocado once again became the focus of YouTube commentary through two major documentaries. The first one was iNabber's 7-hour deep dive, which analyzed Nikocado's life and career in painstaking detail, describing him as a man trapped in a self-destructive cycle, spiraling for views and attention. At one point, iNabber described Nikocado as the internet villain because of his eating habits and controversies.
Basically, Nikocado Avocado over the last few years has been the embodiment of chaos on YouTube. This person is somebody that is perceived as a villain. was now on a never-ending mission to get more and more famous in the pursuit of views and money.
And later went on to say the following.
Well, my friends, in today's long video, we're going to be going through the entire story of Lika, from his origins before YouTube to the very current day of everything that this man is currently doing.
I never thought he had Nikocato's full story, but as he would later find out, he only had half of it. Just 4 days later, SunnyV2 uploaded his own documentary, painting a similar picture of a creator consumed by chaos.
Nikocato's recent video is so incredibly tragic, it makes all of his previous breakdowns seem like they were happy moments.
Who is now regretting that he sacrificed his health for online fame.
My life was going great, so I decided to do this YouTube life. And I'm sitting here thinking, I have thrown away the best years of my life.
Admitting he never would have started if given a second chance.
Both videos exploded instantly, drawing millions of views and reigniting long-standing debates about Nikocato's downfall. But less than 24 hours later, the entire story was debunked when Nikocato uploaded a new video titled 2 Steps Ahead, revealing that he had secretly lost over 250 pounds.
Today I woke up from a very long dream, and I also woke up having lost 250 pounds off of my body.
And that most of the footage used in those documentaries was over 2 years old. This hit the internet like a shockwave, making SunnyV2 and iNabber's videos age terribly overnight. As expected, the fallout was quick, as comment sections soon flooded with messages of shock and disbelief. This aged like milk within less than 24 hours. They all went to war only to realize he was 2 steps ahead. And while Nikocato's reveal flipped the entire script on its critics, Colleen Ballinger's case shows what happens when old footage comes back to haunt you. One of YouTube's most beloved creators, Colleen Ballinger, built her reputation on wholesome family-friendly content, videos that entertained millions and made her seem like the kind of creator parents could trust their kids to watch. But that image wouldn't last long. In a resurfaced clip from one of her live Miranda Sings shows, Colleen invited a young boy from the audience on stage for what was meant to be a comedy bit.
James, come here, have a seat. Now, since you are my summer bae, I was curious, would you like to go on a date with me right now on stage? I would absolutely love to.
However, things quickly escalated when she placed a bag of cheese balls inside her pants and then asked the boy to reach in and grab some.
Do you want a cheese ball? I'd love one. I can't believe I'm reaching in there right now.
The footage resurfaced years later after allegations emerged that Colleen had engaged in inappropriate interactions with underage fans. And suddenly, that funny stage bit wasn't seen as harmless anymore. It became proof that there was more bad behavior happening, like when she went as far as sending one of her fans her personal underwear.
It was so ridiculous and funny, we laughed about it, and I forgot to send them to him. And eventually he tweeted me.
No!
I sent them to him, he put them on over his clothes and posted about them. It was like a big joke within the fandom.
Colleen tried to defend herself, saying,
I've always given away weird stuff, and so in my mind at the time, this was no different than all the other weird stuff I send to my fans as a joke.
But for many, the trust was already gone. The wholesome image she had built over years of family-friendly content crumbled instantly almost overnight. With fans leaving comments like, "This is disgusting," and "How did they not find this inappropriate 9 years ago until 2023?" and "Why did Miranda let him reach in her front?" That's weird and predatory. And while Colleen's video aged from her inappropriate actions with minors, others aged terribly because of missed opportunities. Take the story of the Doorbot for instance, which was later renamed to Ring. When Jamie Siminoff first pitched his idea to the investors on Shark Tank,
introducing the Doorbot, the first ever video doorbell built for the smartphone. With Doorbot you can see and speak with visitors from anywhere.
They didn't see the potential, thinking it was just another product that would never make it to the market in the real world.
I think that you have potential to do a lot more with this, but I'm not connecting to that this does enough at this time to distinguish itself as different from what else is out there on the market for the higher price point. And so for that reason, I'm out.
The rejection was crushing, but he didn't give up. Instead, he took his idea, refined it, and focused on building a real business. The product eventually caught the attention of the right partners, and the company exploded. In a stunning turn of events, Ring Doorbell was acquired by Amazon for a staggering over $1 billion, something that the sharks never expected would ever happen. The very idea that shark investors dismissed as useless turned out to become a massive success, instantly making their video age terribly. And the story didn't end there. Years later, the inventor returned to Shark Tank not as a hopeful entrepreneur, but as a guest shark, sitting alongside the investors who had once rejected him. It was a full circle moment, proof that timing, perseverance, and vision can completely flip the narrative.
Can't trust your AI results? Let Borium sift through 170 million papers and find verified answers in seconds. Get results you can trust with cent% traceable sources across Think 6 disciplines. Too many papers? Not enough insight? Get key insights instantly. Borium helps you see the big picture. Instantly get summaries, key points, and cheats, all organized in your personal knowledge base.
Some stories turned into billion-dollar success tales. Others fell apart because of betrayal. As one of the Try Guys, Ned Fulmer built his entire brand around being the wife guy. He idolized his wife in every video.
My wife, 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 my wife.
Showing what appeared to be an unbreakable bond. At one point, they did a video titled Couples Break Up for a Week to see what it was like if they were separated, while keeping it lighthearted and entertaining. Fans loved the concept as it made them feel even more connected to the couple. At one point in the video, Ned said the following:
I already can't wait for us to get back together. One of the things that I don't like to do is eating by myself. I'm gonna put my wedding ring right next to this super cute picture of us, next to this other super cute picture of us.
Seeming to care deeply about the well-being of their marriage. But what he said would later make the whole video age terribly, as behind the cameras, Ned's life told a very different story. In 2022, photos surfaced of him cheating with one of his employees, which completely shattered the loyal image he had built over the years. And suddenly, Couples Break Up for a Week looked completely ironic. Fans rewatched past videos, noticing moments that suddenly seemed off, even going as far as making clip compilations to mock him.
No, that's a no.
No.
Okay, you don't want to break up a marriage.
No.
Ned publicly admitted his mistakes.
3 years ago, I cheated on my wife with my producer. It became a massive public scandal that caused a lot of pain.
Apologizing for betraying his spouse and the trust of his audience.
I broke your trust. I betrayed my spouse.
But the fallout was inevitable. He left the Try Guys, and eventually his marriage to Ariel ended after 15 years. While Ned's video aged because of infidelity, the next creator's video aged from something far darker. Boy in a Band, known for his music and educational content, had cultivated a reputation as a creative and socially conscious YouTuber. He often used his platform to share his rap music.
Right here, in the dead of night, I'm thinking one of us will die here. Look at that frightened, better not fight it.
And other musical projects, mixing entertainment with messages that challenged his audience to think critically. But while many remember Boy in a Band for his talent and style, some of his older content hasn't aged quite as well. One of his notable music videos featured a rap verse in which he says, "I was never taught what laws there are."
I was never taught what laws there are. I was never taught what laws there are. Let me repeat.
Back then, it sounded like a deep line about personal struggles or about questioning the rules of society. But over time, allegations came out that made people see the videos differently. Multiple women came forward accusing Boy in a Band of grooming, claiming that his interactions with fans had crossed ethical and legal boundaries. Like when he slept with one of his 17-year-old fans and made her sing a song with the lyrics "Take Me Without My Consent," which in many countries would be considered as pedophilia. Suddenly, the video that had once been viewed as an expressive piece of art was reinterpreted by some as unsettling given the new context of these allegations. Some left comments like, "We should have taught him what laws there are," and "You didn't know grooming was illegal." Now, it's important to note that these allegations were never confirmed to be true. Boy in a Band is still innocent until proven guilty, as he never addressed them since he had already left the internet years before the allegations came out. Still, this lyric became a running joke as it seemingly aged like milk. After Boy in a Band's fall from grace, Sunny V2 turned his focus to Logan Paul, whose so-called redemption arc would soon backfire spectacularly. Logan Paul is one of YouTube's most infamous figures, known for his larger-than-life personality and a career full of highs, lows, and public missteps. In Sunny V2's video titled "The Unforeseen Redemption of Logan Paul's Reputation," Logan was portrayed as having finally turned a corner.
Not only did Logan's reputation recover from rock bottom, it's somehow gone well beyond recovery, to the point where the people who used to hate him have now become his biggest fans.
Something that captured the attention of many. The video highlighted his attempts to shift his image, embracing charity work.
Logan Paul would then upload a video titled "Suicide Be Here Tomorrow," in which Logan explained that he planned on personally contributing in order to help the cause.
So I'm pledging to donate $1 million to various suicide prevention organizations.
Taking on professional boxing and presenting himself as a more respectable, accountable figure in the public eye.
Because Logan now had more time on his hands, during which he would begin planning a new internet endeavor.
Oh no.
Dito ka na sa Buenas. Secure at legit. May 24/7 customer service pa. Kaya kung pagiging tunay lang, i-Buenas na yan!
And this new endeavor would be one of the most significant when it came to repairing his reputation and gaining respect from the wider YouTube audience.
Hey yo, what is up? My name is Logan Paul, controversial YouTube star, boxer, ex-vegan, and now I guess podcaster?
Fans were invited to believe that Logan had learned from his past controversies, evolving into someone worthy of respect again. But that narrative didn't hold because not long after, Logan's over-the-top ego resurfaced. He later became involved in new controversies, including issues with his Lunchly venture, where moldy cheese was reportedly found in the products, questionable crypto investment promotions, and even highly scrutinized crypto projects where he was accused of scamming his own fanbase. Suddenly, the Sunny V2 video that painted him as reformed aged like milk, with viewers who had embraced the idea of his comeback being forced to reassess. This aged well. Bro did the full redemption spin and begun redemption unwind. The video itself became an example of how fast online narratives can change. From YouTube stars to fitness influencers, the next case dives into the world of the Liver King, a man who built his empire on being natty until the truth came out. Liver King built an empire claiming his shredded physique came entirely from ancestral living. He showcased a lifestyle of raw meat, intense workouts, and what he called ancestral practices, presenting himself as the ultimate example of natural human potential. Fans were captivated, leaving him heartwarming messages like, "Love this, I love the positive vibes, hard work, and enjoying the results. This is what life is about. Awesome, I just subscribed to your channel, Liver King, you're an inspiration." However, the video that would later age the worst was one of his high-profile interviews with Logan Paul, where he empathetically claimed to be completely natty, which means that he was 100% natural and that he never used steroids or enhancements.
There's a lot of subtitles that are convinced that Liver King is taking steroids. Do you think if I was on steroids, I would have these fucking appendages down here, these legs?
Have legs?
Do you see how fucking little my fucking legs are?
At the time, every statement reinforced the idea that his body was earned purely through discipline, diet, and lifestyle. But in 2022, leaked emails revealed the ugly truth that Liver King was spending over $11,000 a month on performance-enhancing drugs. Suddenly, the interview where he claimed to be natty became the centerpiece of ridicule. Even after the discovery, Liver King attempted to respond publicly, but his apology only made things worse. Instead of sincerely addressing the deception, he spent a lot of time bragging about his wealth and the empire he had built.
I've stated that this is a complicated as fuck topic, at least to me, because before social media, I was rich and anonymous, and after social media, I'm still rich, but no longer anonymous, and I never expected this kind of exposure.
framing the steroid use as just another part of his lifestyle.
I've done steroids. And yes, I'm on steroids, monitored and managed by a trained hormone clinician.
Rather than regaining trust, the attempt further damages credibility, making the I'm Natty interview look even worse in hindsight. A video that had once inspired millions now was full of lies and poor judgment, causing almost all the videos he had made during his quote Natty era to age like milk. However, even honesty can age badly, as Joe Rogan found out when one of his most inspirational interviews turned into a chilling cautionary tale. Sheldon Johnson had spent 25 years in prison after being convicted of serious crimes. Joe Rogan's interview framed him as a man who was wrongfully convicted for murder and manslaughter.
I think that there's a mistake here because it says that he was sentenced to 50 years. I will say this, that he received a sentence that far eclipses a sentence that would be commonly doled out for murder or manslaughter.
But had changed after serving his time in prison. The conversation focused on his personal growth.
He's someone that's taken responsibility for what he did, and I think is a living example of what can happen if someone's life is worth just throwing away and putting behind bars so that they can rot in a dank cell, because he would have been 70 years old.
With Josh Dubin, an attorney who had brought him on the show, going as far as describing him as the following.
Another miracle sitting to my right, just like a marvelous human being who was basically told by an African American judge that you don't matter.
For viewers, it was a powerful story of redemption, but just 38 days after the interview aired, everything fell apart. Sheldon Johnson was arrested again, this time for murder.
And he boasted about turning his life around after getting out of prison.
Murder, manslaughter, and criminal possession of a weapon. It's a shocking set of charges for a man most recently known for this.
Authorities discovered dismembered body parts belonging to 44-year-old Colin Small inside of Johnson's apartment in the Bronx, New York. He was charged with murder, manslaughter, illegal possession of a weapon, and concealment of a human corpse. Johnson pleaded not guilty at his arraignment and was remanded into custody without bail.
Friday is company karaoke, 90s pop theme.
The man whose story had been celebrated as a proof of change had returned to a life of violence, making the video that was meant to inspire trust and hope instantly age like milk. Joe Rogan's episode fell apart because of the person he gave the platform to, but EDP445's downfall was entirely his own doing, and no video aged worse than his. Known for his over-the-top humor and loud personality,
Alright y'all, what the fuck it is, man? It's your boy, Eat That 445, coming back at you, hoe ass, no life, trolling ass.
EDP445 built a massive following on YouTube, connecting with fans in ways that felt energetic and relatable. However, he started facing multiple allegations of inappropriate engagement with minors, and in response, he released a video addressing the allegations, telling his fans,
If you honestly believe that I'm a motherfucking pedophile, you're fucking high.
At the time, some viewers accepted his apology, taking his words at face value. But everything unraveled in April 2021 when YouTuber Alex Rosen set up a sting operation posing as a 13-year-old girl named Sophie. He orchestrated conversations with EDP that escalated to explicit content, resulting in a meeting arranged under the pretense of delivering a cupcake.
Well, I was actually coming out here to pick up a cupcake and then go back home.
When confronted at the location, EDP claimed he had only come for the cupcake, even though he knew well that he had come to pick up a minor. The incident was recorded and uploaded, instantly going viral as the cupcake incident. Suddenly, the apology video meant to defend his reputation looked painfully misleading, with viewers leaving comments like, he did indeed throw his life away for all that. And it hurts watching this years later because every part of me wanted to believe him. What had been intended as accountability now served as a reminder that his earlier statements were false and completely out of touch with reality. The cupcake incident shows just how quickly a video meant to protect an image can age like milk, especially when real-world evidence exposes the truth. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably like these.
Huddled in bare-bone trenches,
scratched into the frozen and rocky ground. The Marines of Fox Company, 7th Marine Regiment, brace for an impending assault on the gloomy, bitter night of December 2nd, 1950. For 5 days, 246 men hunkered down on a low mountain overlooking Lake Changjin, known by many today as Chosin Reservoir. Captain William Barber's men have a singular mission: hold back the ferocious and well-planned Chinese nighttime assaults. Cold, wounded, and tired, they have no choice but to fight on. After the Second World War, the Korean Peninsula was divided between communist forces in the north and nationalist forces in the south. On June 25, 1950, the better-armed North Korean army invaded the south after a series of border skirmishes. Within weeks, Seoul fell, and communist forces nearly conquered the south. The United States responded with due force. General Douglas MacArthur led a combined Korean, American, and United Nations defense at the Pusan perimeter from August to mid-September 1950. The Incheon landing of September 15 and the recapture of Seoul began a 3-month campaign to push the North Korean forces north of the 38th parallel and then reunite the country. The farther north U.S. and Korean forces marched, the less resistance they faced, which proved to be a trap. President Harry Truman's administration and Douglas MacArthur did not anticipate Chinese intervention, as they assumed that Chairman Mao Zedong would not act without Soviet approval. By late November 1950, over 300,000 Chinese troops had crossed into North Korea and had raced southward to destroy the U.S. and UN columns. Large-scale Chinese intervention derailed Truman's and MacArthur's plan to unify Korea under an anti-communist government. One of the Chinese's targets was the 10th Corps of the 8th U.S. Army, who were part of the Eastern Column racing north toward the Yalu River from Wonsan. Chinese military planners ordered a sweeping pincer movement to trap the leading elements of 10th Corps forces pinned against Lake Changjin. These leading elements of 10th Corps consisted of the 1st Marine Division and Task Force 31, a combat team of infantry and artillery from the U.S. Army's 7th Division. A detachment of British Royal Marines and some 700 South Koreans reinforced the Marine and Army formations as they pushed toward Lake Changjin. General Oliver Smith, commanding the 1st Marine Division, doubted MacArthur's plans. For one, U.S. troops were overextended and their flanks were exposed. Smith was worried, noting, "I believe a winter campaign in the mountains is too much to ask of American soldiers or Marines. I doubt the feasibility of supplying troops or providing for the evacuation of the sick and wounded." To the Marines on the ground, troubling signs of a Chinese intervention were quickly becoming apparent as well. On November 2nd, at Sudan Gorge, Marines exchanged fire with small units of well-equipped and spirited Chinese soldiers. Continuing north, they set up a base of operation to the south and west of Lake Changjin and paused to enjoy Thanksgiving dinner on November 25th. A well-rested soldier is an effective and energetic soldier, but for the Marines of Fox Company, sleep was a luxury that was hard to come by, especially in the freezing foxholes around the Chosin Reservoir. Thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Manta Sleep, a restful night is now within your reach. Manta Sleep is the maker of the world's best sleep masks, all designed to help you sleep deeper and wake up refreshed so you can do more throughout your day. My daily routine can be exhausting, so I was excited to try out one of their sleep masks, and I was thoroughly impressed with the results. Their masks are fully adjustable and crafted from premium materials, offering unmatched comfort and breathability, making them perfect for both short power naps or a full night of sleep. In addition to their sleep masks, Manta Sleep also also offers a range of sleep accessories, including pillowcases, bed sheets, and even white noise machines, all designed to help you fall asleep faster and sleep more soundly. Start improving your sleep quality with Manta Sleep today. Support our channel by clicking the link in the description below and enjoy 10% off of your purchase using our exclusive discount code HISTORIAN10 at checkout.
Instead of typing, just talk. Whisperflow cleans it up. It explains that voice is iterative by default. You stumble, you rephrase, you correct yourself. Whisperflow handles all of that. You want to send the perfect prompts wherever you're working. Read predictable, all the prompts with AI more. And voice lets you add way more nuance and detail. Better prompts, better results. That's why he calls Flow's voice dictation a major step forward in human-computer interaction. If AI visionaries are raving about it, you should probably give it a try too. It's free. Get voice pilled with Whisperflow today.
Potential disaster loomed. By November 27th, 12 Chinese divisions crept into position to surround the American forces from the western, eastern, and southern parts of the lake. Chinese troops outnumbered American forces 2-1. The communist formations sent to participate in the assault were battle-hardened and fought during the Second World War and the Chinese Civil War. For the Americans and their allies, defending their positions and withdrawing would be no easy feat. Even as temperatures sank to -28 degrees Celsius or -18 Fahrenheit, Chinese morale was high. They hoped to achieve high honor, while Chairman Mao commanded Chinese forces to annihilate all U.S. units they fought. Documents handed to Chinese troops noted that American forces had significant technological advantages. However, the documents boasted that daring action to surround and cut off supply lines would cause the cowardly American soldiers to retreat. Well clad in warm and camouflaged uniforms, Chinese troops favored maneuverability and stealth on foot. They attacked at night to blunt the Americans' artillery and air power advantages. Ridges screened their approach. There were only a few possible escape routes for the defenders. Once engaged in combat, Chinese troops blew whistles and trumpets and clashed cymbals to frighten the defending U.S. forces. When one attack failed, another group took its place and picked up the weapons of their fallen comrades. U.S. servicemen and their allies were in a dicey position. Mountainous terrain limited the use of U.S. tanks for counterattacks or defense. The lake was another obstacle for U.S. troops. They had no boats and could not trust the thickness of the ice to support the weight of encumbered marines. The two roads that meandered around the lake and connected U.S. forces were narrow dirt paths hewn along the valley floor. Chinese troops quickly cut them off. When waves of Chinese soldiers crashed into American positions, the Marines and soldiers would not be able to reinforce each other. Battling freezing conditions and constant harassment from probing attacks, U.S. forces worked hard to fortify positions west of the lake at Yudong, while Task Force 31 dug in on the east side of the lake at Pudong. During the opening Chinese assaults, the Marines and soldiers fought independently on the nights of the 27th and 28th. On the 28th, the U.S. headquarters at Hagaru came under attack and was surrounded from the east, west, and south. Fortunately for American soldiers, Chinese troops didn't bring heavier weapons, like artillery or tanks, to the fight, but they did continue a rapid, extensive pincer movement, keeping up the pressure. General Smith called on the famous Marine as Fuller to send a breakthrough force to supply and protect the headquarters. Fuller organized a mixed column of infantry and tanks from the Marines, Army, and British Royal Marines. The commander of 41 Independent Commando, Douglas Drysdale, led the task force starting on November 29th. Hurrying their way north through entrenched positions and flanking fire, only a third of the force reached Hagaru. Taking advantage of the commanding heights and hill along the path, Chinese troops rained small arms fire on the column. The pass earned the nickname Hellfire Valley to those who survived. One British Marine remembered that Chinese mortar and rifle fire ripped through their trucks, wounding or killing the men inside. The resistance forced a third of the task force to fall back to Koto, while the last third were either dead, wounded, or captured. Chinese troops inflicted 300 casualties as the task force barreled into Hagaru. Though Task Force Drysdale reinforced Hagaru, the Chinese 80th Division soundly beat Task Force 31, inflicting 1,000 casualties, killed or taken prisoner. The 1st Marine Division fared better during the first phase of the battle. Fox Company's heroics secured the dirt road leading to safety. Securing the makeshift path would allow the 8,000 Marines of the 1st Marine Division, pinned down northeast of Fox's position, to retreat. The company itself had to be relieved under trying circumstances. Around 10 p.m. on December 2nd, during another assault on Fox Company's position, chaos erupted behind Chinese lines. On a rocky ridge to the northeast, a relief column of U.S. Marines, led by Lieutenant Chuan Lee and Lieutenant Colonel Ray Davis, crested the heights and attacked the Chinese troops' rear, marching secretly, sometimes within 30 meters of the enemy before engaging them. Davis and Lee's troops earned the nickname the Ridge Runners for their exploits. By the morning of December 3rd, the beleaguered Fox Company was relieved. Sound positioning and artillery fire defended their positions until the bulk of the Marines withdrew from Yudam to Hagaru by December 4th. Air power facilitated their defense, supply, and eventual retreat from Yudam to Hagaru. Fighter squadrons from offshore U.S. Navy carriers.
With 170 million papers, 140,000 journals, and millions of patents, Boreum gives you instant and traceable references. From literature discovery from exploring Scholar Galaxy to tracing their academic tree. Everything you need for research is in Boreum and ready to use. It's a new way of doing research where your ideas move faster than ever. Can you imagine it? Let Boreum make it real today.
Tim, with Monday Sidekick, AI is easy. Right. Just click the star and Monday Sidekick does it all. It can manage projects, stop campaigns, sorts data, you name it. Sure, it's safe and your data's protected.
Maybe this Monday thing can help us out. Thanks, Llama. Oddly reassuring.
I get that a lot. Must be the first.
Monday Sidekick. AI you'll love to use. Monday.com.
Marine Air Group 33, the U.S. Air Force, and the Royal Australian Air Force scrambled to support the ground troops. Corsairs, Sky Raiders, and Mustangs strafed and bombed exposed and tightly packed Chinese assault columns. Pilots dropped napalm to deter continuing attacks or dislodge entrenched Chinese troops blocking the way out. Cargo planes landed supplies and evacuated the wounded and dead from Hagaru. Though less exposed to the elements or enemy fire, U.S. and Allied pilots risked their lives and suffered casualties. One notable loss was the death of Ensign Jesse Brown, a U.S. Navy African-American officer and pilot. In his Corsair, he and his 6-fighter flight provided close air support to the Marines fighting around the lake. In the course of his mission, his plane took small arms fire and crashed. Brown's wingman, Thomas Hudner, intentionally crashed his plane to rescue the trapped pilot. Hudner's efforts were in vain, however, and Brown died in the twisted Corsair. Despite great sacrifices, another challenge loomed to the south. To leave Hagerty, the remaining Marines and soldiers had to march through the narrow valley on a service road that led to a rescue at Tam Hung Port. Though U.S. commanders left garrison forces at key settlements along the route to the lake, Chinese units blocked the way south. The Marines left Lake Changjin behind and marched 18 kilometers, or 11 miles, south to Kotok on December 4th. The mauled Chinese divisions that assaulted U.S. forces around the lake paused to regroup and resupply. The fresh Chinese divisions stalked the heights and hills along the road south, harrying any U.S. forces they contacted. Snow and wind whipped the long retreating column. The 5th Marine Regiment guarded the kilometers-long convoy, while the 7th struck out into the hills to suppress enemy attacks. Once again, U.S. and Australian aircraft swept the gorges and passes, suppressing ambushing troops. Tanks pushed over roadblocks, and artillery fire covered U.S. advances. Though they made steady progress, it was still rough going. Every hill, every twist of the road, and even every building seemed to harbor enemy forces waiting to strike. By December 8th, U.S. technological and logistical prowess still faced its most significant challenge on the march to safety at the port of Ham Hung. On reconnaissance flights, Marine Chief Engineer John Partridge observed that Chinese forces from the 60th Division partially destroyed a concrete bridge that spanned a deep chasm. The retreating U.S. troops had 1,000 vehicles that needed a bridge to cross the Funch Island Pass, some 60 kilometers or 37 miles north of the port. General Smith refused to abandon the convoy. Their artillery, equipment, supplies, and wounded could only be transported by vehicle once they abandoned Hagerty. The Chinese 60th Division was also entrenched nearby, sniping engineers and laborers repairing the bridge. The plan was twofold. Marines would fight the 60th Division and allow the engineers to rebuild the bridge. The combat troops held up their end of the plan.
I like
They
this guy.
fought
This
uphill
guy's like
to protect the Marine and Army construction efforts in the valley below. Partridge and his staff had no bridge building supplies, but improvised a daring solution. On December 9th, 11 U.S. Air Force cargo planes dropped prefabricated bridge sections to waiting engineers below. Enough sections were intact for the Marines to work through a blizzard, repairing the bridge under enemy fire. One particular difficulty was buttressing the supporting pillars on the valley floor. Using wood beams, dirt, and even the bodies of enemy soldiers killed in action, the treadway could support Marines on foot and the vehicles rolling along. With the bridge completed and the Chinese forces at bay, surviving Marines and soldiers hobbled their way to Ham Hung. The badly mauled, hungry, and tired Chinese divisions slowed their ambushes. On December 11th, the survivors of the Battle of Chosin reached the point and were eventually evacuated by sea on December 15th. American forces survived to fight another day. However, it was clear that this was still a severe defeat. Task Force 31 was practically destroyed, and Chinese troops forced the remaining soldiers and Marines from their positions. Though effective in blunting Chinese attacks, U.S. air power and firepower didn't stop them entirely. The Communist forces pressed the attacks relentlessly and adapted well to U.S. tactics. After the sunny outlook of the previous 3 months defeating North Korean armies, the Battle of Chosin Reservoir foreshadowed a long conflict with Chinese forces.
AI writing tool that works seamlessly with your everyday app, and it goes beyond simple grammar check. Here's how I use it. Number 1, for my voiceover scripts of my videos. I usually draft all my scripts in messy bullet points like this, and just brain dump the ideas. Then I use Grammarly to polish it into real sentences, and from there I ask for some rewrites. I like having options whether I want to sound more casual, sharper, or more structured. You can go as detailed as changing it word for word, or just let it rewrite the whole thing for you in one click. Number 2, for writing emails. Using the My Voice feature, you can actually set the tone you want depending on who you're writing to. So if I'm writing a casual note to a teammate versus sending a formal email to a friend partner, it adjusts everything to fit the audience. No more overthinking or second guessing how I say.
If your work has a lot to do with writing, I highly recommend using Grammarly. So sign up and download Grammarly for free.
Only 5 years after the end of the Second World War, the major nations of the world are once again up in arms. As nuclear weapon-fueled Cold War tensions grow between East and West, the Korean Peninsula will play host to its first major hot conflict. Initially a struggle between two opposing Korean states, within months a global US coalition and an emerging Chinese juggernaut are fighting it out in a war that will see both sides approach the brink of victory and defeat. The Japanese defeating World War II and the Second Sino-Japanese War ends 35 years of Japanese control over the Korean peninsula. Soviet forces advanced to Manchuria and land in Korea in August 1945, while the US occupies Japan from September. Both agreed to divide Korea along the 38th parallel and assume occupational duties in the north and south. The line is to be temporary, and both sides withdraw as agreed in 1948. But they leave behind new states aligned with their governments. In the south, the former exiled provisional government president, Dr. Syngman Rhee, announces the Republic of Korea in August. In September, former anti-Japanese leader and Soviet Army Major Kim Il-sung announces the Communist Democratic People's Republic of Korea in the north. Both Koreas claim the entire peninsula, and neither side rules out reunification by force. Fighting is in fact already underway. The North directs an insurgency in the South, which is strongly repressed by Rhee, and both sides launch border raids. Often these are conducted by police units, but both states develop official armies under the guidance of their former occupiers. The Korean People's Army, or KPA, in the north, and the Republic of Korea Army, or ROK, in the south. ROK forces are generally more aggressive and initially have the upper hand. Rhee justifies ROK attacks as retaliation for northern ones. We are responsible for the protection of the lives and property of our people, and when the Korean communists come over the 38th parallel and destroy us, we cannot sit still and allow them to harm us without resistance. Overall, the U.S. has little interest in Korea. U.S. Far East Commander General Douglas MacArthur has vague orders about Korea, and some in Washington are concerned about Rhee's lack of democratic credentials. With military tension and pressure for unification mounting, Kim Il-sung approaches the Soviet Union for permission to launch a unification invasion. Stalin is reluctant, since he's focused on Europe, and suggests the North expands the insurgency. He refuses a formal alliance with the North, but does send equipment, including tanks. Kim is disappointed, but also makes it clear that he will seek assistance elsewhere. Soviet Ambassador Terentij Shtikov recalls. Kim Il-sung said he cannot start the attack on his own because he's a disciplined communist, and Comrade Stalin's instructions are the law to him. Kim said if he cannot meet Comrade Stalin now, he intends to see Mao Zedong. Kim Il-sung was a bit drunk after the party and spoke in an excited...
You don't deserve to settle, so play a game that won't either. We've made major changes to agents, weapons, and maps. We've turned down the volume on the gunplay gets a bigger slice of the spotlight. And we've shaved off some hard edges on a couple of frustrating applications. We'll continue to do whatever necessary to make sure every emerging come play.
I learned that ChatGPT works best with detailed prompts, but I hate typing them. So instead, I dictate them using whisper flow while walking. When I'm walking, my brain just works differently. Ideas start pouring out.
But ChatGPT's native voice dictation can't handle my stream of consciousness rambling. Whisper flow cleans it up instantly. Here's what I'd type if I were at my desk. Here's what it looks like when I dictate ChatGPT. And here's what it looks like when I dictate ChatGPT using whisper flow. Rich, polished, perfectly structured prompts that unlock ChatGPT's true potential. The outputs that I get from these whisper flow walking sessions, night and day difference. It's like I went from chicken scratch notes to a client-ready draft.
The best part, getting a ton of work done while also getting 10,000 steps. Try it and I bet your best work will happen on your next walk. Get Whisper Flow.
Fashion, but it was not accidental that he began the conversation. The newly proclaimed Communist People's Republic of China is more receptive to Kim. Thousands of Koreans fought with the communist forces in the Chinese Civil War, and Mao Zedong releases them into the KPA, granting it 28,000 seasoned troops. Kim promises a rapid campaign, and by January 1950, Stalin also gives his permission, but makes it clear the Soviet Union will not intervene directly. Stalin likely approves the North Korean attack because he thinks the US will not intervene. What he doesn't know is that in April 1950, US policy paper NSC 68 commits America to rolling back communist aggression across the globe. In June 1950, the KPA has around 223,000 troops, including 100,000 border police, about 150 tanks, mostly T-34-85s, and 132 aircraft that are mostly older Soviet models. Roughly half of the KPA invasion force are Korean veterans of the Chinese Civil War. Meanwhile, the ROK Army has around 87,500 troops, with only 35,000 along the border. It has no tanks and few anti-tank weapons. At 4 a.m. on June 25, 1950, the KPA invades, aided by artillery and deception tactics. North Korea later claims they're responding to a southern invasion, but there is little evidence for this.
No.
With their mostly invulnerable armor in the lead, KPA spearheads head south, supported by amphibious landings. Korea's narrow geography means KPA forces are concentrated on 3 invasion routes into the south. The only major resistance is towards Chechun and Seoul, but when the ROK 2nd Division fails to counterattack with the 7th Division, the capital's defense crumbles. By June 28th, ROK units retreat and re-abandon Seoul. Given Ri's unpopularity with some South Koreans, the KPA is not entirely unwelcome. The soldiers were speaking in their hard northern accent, but to us, they were compatriots who spoke the same language, had the same customs, and had Korean blood in their veins. They seemed like long-lost brothers who'd finally come home from some faraway place. Seeing them talk quietly and laugh, no one was frightened. In the retreat, ROK forces prematurely destroyed bridges across the Han River, trapping around 44,000 ROK troops to its north. By July 30th, the ROK army can account for only 22,000 troops. The US is surprised since they hadn't anticipated an attack and expected South Korea to perform better. Following the invasion, the US takes immediate action, but not in Korea. President Harry Truman fears a wider communist offensive and orders the US 7th Fleet into the Taiwanese Straits, protecting the nationalist Chinese regime of Chiang Kai-shek in Taiwan. The move outrages communist China, who were likely preparing an invasion. The US appeals to the United Nations and leads a resolution to send armed assistance to South Korea. Critically, the Soviet Union is not present at the vote, as it's boycotting the Security Council over a lack of recognition for communist China. So the USSR doesn't use its veto, and the resolution passes. A broad group of states now pledge themselves to the first UN command. Eventually, by 1954, 22 countries will provide troops or medical support in Korea, including Britain and Canada, but also Ethiopia, Colombia, and Luxembourg. Another early supporter is Turkey, which is concerned about Soviet threats.
Pepas lang, tol. Dito na sa Philippines, secure at legit. May 24/7 customer service pa.
While we fight here together with the UN troops, we feel that we're defending our own country. Some people in our country ask us why we have been fighting here. Our answer is as such. The communist threat is worldwide. In order to crush this threat, we have to fulfill our duty. Some in the US command are concerned these contributions, which often lack weapons, support, or logistics, could become burdensome, although they provide an important degree of international legitimacy. But international forces will take time to arrive. US occupation forces in Japan rushed to South Korea under General MacArthur, now commander of all UN forces. US occupation troops, however, are unprepared. Post-World War II demobilization reduces the US Army from 89 divisions to just 10, and many of these are understrength, lack infantry firepower, and are poorly trained. When Task Force Smith, a token US force, meets the KPA at Osan on July 5th, the North Koreans quickly rout it. US troops' main anti-tank infantry weapon, the M9A1 bazooka, performs poorly against KPA T-34s. The US then hurries the new 3.5-inch super bazookas to the battlefield, but before they arrive, KPA armor strikes the US 24th Division. As daylight broke, we heard this loud clanking noise. We understood now what was happening. Their tanks were coming. The tanks continued to roll down the road towards us. We had no way of stopping them. I heard the new CO, Colonel Martin, try to take on one of the tanks with a bazooka. The tank scored a direct hit on the colonel, and he was killed on the spot. By late July, the KPA pushes the 24th out of Daejeon, and even the newly arrived 1st Cavalry Division, largely an infantry force, cannot hold the line. US and ROK forces frequently outnumber the KPA spearheads, but ROK reinforcements are often rapidly raised recruits, and the US Army is designed to fight with large supporting elements that are rare in Korea. We do have air power, but a lack of forward air controllers limits its usefulness. In 17 days of fighting, the 24th Division loses 30% of its strength. Refugees are also in danger, and UN fears of KPA infiltration amongst refugees leads to civilian casualties. UN aircraft sometimes strafe or bomb them, and between July 25th and 29th, 1950, US troops kill up to 400 South Korean refugees around a bridge at Nogun-ri, likely because of these fears. A South Korean investigation claims US officers gave orders for troops and aircraft to fire on refugee columns and provide US reports from July 1950 as evidence. But an official US investigation claims no formal order was given. By August, North Korean forces pushed UN units to the Naktong River and the Busan perimeter defensive line. As UN reinforcements, including the British 27th Brigade, arrive, the KPA continually attempts to breach the line. UN forces are now organized under the US 8th Army, and by late August, they have a 5-to-1 advantage in armor, including M26 Pershing tanks and air superiority. By September 12th, the KPA assault is burnt out. Meanwhile, in occupied southern cities, enthusiasm for reunification sours in the face of communist political violence. In the beginning, it was an atmosphere of unrestrained joy, of true liberation. Long live the fatherland. We still did not realize that this was a catastrophe for us. In the days that followed, we heard that the communists were rounding up reactionaries. Slowly, the atmosphere of terror set in. The UN estimates northern forces murdered 26,000 South Koreans by September 1950. But southern cities will not be occupied much longer. As the KPA assault slows at Busan, General MacArthur launches an ambitious operation to decisively turn the tide. The western port of Incheon serves Seoul and is a vital strategic target. MacArthur believes an amphibious landing behind KPA lines could stop North Korea in its tracks. It will be like an electric fan. You go to the wall and pull the plug out, and the fan will stop. When we get well ashore at Incheon, the North Koreans will have no choice but to pull out or surrender. But Incheon's major variance in tidal height provides only a 3-hour window on September 15th for landing. MacArthur is undeterred and orders the newly formed 10th Corps ashore. The landing is an immediate success, partly because even though the KPA likely know of it, they lack forces to repel it. U.S. troops secure Valmy-do Island in the morning, then hit Incheon in the evening to light resistance. By the end of the day, 10th Corps has seized most of Incheon. Now it pushes towards Seoul, while simultaneously the 8th Army in the Busan perimeter breaks out. With the KPA's rear threatened, they start a mass retreat. U.S. troops enter Seoul on September 25th as KPA forces conduct rearguard actions. As front lines rapidly change, both sides carry out atrocities, including the execution of prisoners and political opponents. By September 27th, the 10th Corps recaptures most of the city and links up with 8th Army, trapping KPA units. Only around 25,000 make it back to the 38th parallel. With the KPA retreating, MacArthur demands to pursue them across the parallel. Some UN allies, especially Britain, are concerned about potential Chinese intervention. With ROK forces already preparing to cross, Truman grants permission by late September. MacArthur can cross the parallel, although only ROK forces can operate near the Chinese border. The situation alarms Beijing. Mao sees Korea's unification under a US-backed government as a potential prelude to US attack on China. Maintaining North Korea is therefore an important buffer to US aggression. The US intervention in the Taiwanese Straits has already heightened tensions and signaled, from a Chinese perspective, US hostility. For us, the Korean question is not simply a question concerning Korea. It is related to the Taiwan issue. From the information we got, they wanted to calm China first, and after occupying North Korea, they will come to attack China. By October, Mao decides to intervene and believes fighting in Korea's narrow geography would be advantageous to China. Soon, roughly 225,000 Chinese troops are near the border. Mao warns the US via Indian diplomats that he will not tolerate non-Korean troops near the Yalu River, but the Americans ignore him. US intelligence chief Major General Charles Willoughby thinks a Chinese attack is unlikely. In early October, ROK forces cross the parallel, followed by 8th Army on October 9th. Its target is the North Korean capital of Pyongyang. Meanwhile, 10th Corps, now its own independent command under Lieutenant General Edward Almond, is redeployed in the east. It plans to launch an amphibious assault at Wonsan, but mines will delay the operation until long after it's been captured by ROK troops on land. On October 19th, 8th Army seizes Pyongyang and crosses the Taedong River. The KPA continues to fight rearguard actions, but is forced back towards the Yalu River. On October 24th, MacArthur lifts restrictions on non-ROK forces as forward elements push further north. The Yalu River, the Chinese border, and Korean unification are now in sight for the UN. But soon, their forward units encounter stronger resistance and a new enemy. On October 25th, units of the Chinese People's Volunteer Army moved to trap advance ROK forces reaching the Yalu River. Then, between November 1st and 3rd, they attacked the 8th Cavalry Regiment and 2nd ROK Corps around Unsan. Using mortars and rockets, Chinese troops break up US units and attack them in isolated groups. The Chinese overrun US positions, and a general rout begins. There was just mass hysteria on the position. It was every man for himself. The shooting was terrific. There were Chinese shouting everywhere. I didn't know which way to go. In the end, I just ran with the crowd. We just ran and ran until the bugles grew fainter. In the 1st Cavalry Division's first clash with the Chinese, they lose 1,481 killed, wounded, and captured. However, by November 6th, Chinese attacks abruptly end. MacArthur now claims the Chinese attacks were not a serious attempt at intervention. He plans a new advance and predicts victory before Christmas. Part of this plan includes an advance by 10th Corps in the east. In early November, they land at Iwon and push towards the Yalu and the strategically important Chongjin, also known as Chosin Reservoir. The decision to separate 8th Army and 10th Corps commands is controversial, especially considering mountains hinder east-west communication. But General Almond, a protege of MacArthur's, is eager to maintain his independence. Supported by ROK troops, forward elements of the 7th Division reached the Yalu on November 21st. On November 25th, UN forces opened MacArthur's final offensive. But the very next day, 200,000 Chinese troops under General Peng Dehuai counterattacked. The Chinese know the two main UN forces are separated and aim to, at the very least, eject them from North Korea and preserve it as a friendly buffer state. In the opening attacks against 8th Army, Chinese troops outflank UN positions and establish roadblocks. One attack nearly cuts off the US 2nd Division as Turkish troops try to relieve it. But the 2nd Division makes a dash through Chinese roadblocks to 8th Army lines, later dubbed the Death Ride. By November 30th, the 2nd Division suffers 4,500 casualties and loses much of its equipment. Meanwhile, in the east, Chinese troops now strike vulnerable supply routes of the US advances around Chongjin. Facing 12 Chinese divisions overall, Almond tries to maintain the offensive, but the Chinese ambush and badly damage a relief column of US and British Royal Marines heading for the critical base at Hagaru. Lieutenant Colonel Don Faith, commanding US troops east of the reservoir, messages Almond. Unless someone can help us, I don't have much hope that anybody's going to get out of this. Faith is killed shortly afterwards. Both US columns try to fall back to the base at Hagaru, often through Chinese roadblocks. They have the advantage of air support, including napalm, but struggle in sub-zero conditions. Of the 2,500 men of Task Force Faith, only 385 make it to Hagaru in fighting conditions.
So frustrating.
Imagine conducting every part of your research only on one platform. Meet Boreum, your AI-powered research companion. With 170 million papers, 140,000 journals, and millions of patents, Boreum gives you instant summaries, deep insights, and traceable references. From literature discovery to knowledge management, from exploring Scholar Galaxy to tracing their academic tree. Everything you need for research is in Boreum and ready to use. It's a new way of doing research where your ideas move faster than ever. Can you imagine it? Let Boreum make it real today.
He's wasting all his...
By December 6th, the entire 10th Corps is moving back to Hunnam for evacuation. Marine Commander Oliver Smith reassures reporters. Gentlemen, we are not retreating. We are merely advancing in another direction.
Wow, that guy spammed so many cobs! Hey, you're getting cooked. Well, I did beat him, so...
The bridge at Funchilin Pass has been blown, so UN planes paradrop new bridge sections. The column limps into Hunnam, where a maritime operation evacuates 105,000 UN troops, 18,400 vehicles, and 98,000 refugees by December 24th. UN troops then wreck the port with demolitions and naval gunfire to deny it to the enemy. The sudden reversal comes as a shock to MacArthur and the wider UN forces. Almost immediately, UN troops report being physically overwhelmed by huge waves of Chinese infantry, but the reality is more complex. Chinese human wave attacks do occur, especially later in the war. British soldier and actor Michael Caine later recalls one. The searchlight sprang into life, and there in front of us, a terrifying tableau was illuminated. Thousands of Chinese advancing towards our positions, led by a troop of demonic trumpet players. The first wave of Chinese committed suicide by hurling themselves onto our barbed wire, so their bodies could be used as a bridge for the troops following. However, despite such later dramatic accounts, some historians argue Chinese forces rarely significantly outnumbered UN troops early in the war, and such suicidal attacks are exaggerated. After all, many of the first assault troops are some of China's best, and it makes no sense to waste them. Instead, Chinese units use many tactics to dislocate enemy positions. Almost exclusively attacking at night, they blow whistles and horns to communicate and for psychological impact by making it appear Chinese troops are more numerous or that they've outflanked UN positions.
Yeah, I'm not
Chinese
way
troops use an
better.
assortment of Second World War weapons, mostly captured Japanese and nationalist Chinese models, but also Soviet imports such as the PPSH-41. As they lack armor and artillery, they make wide use of mortar and grenade assaults. Prior to attacks, the Chinese discussed the plans and their political significance in large meetings, allowing for better tactical preparation. Furthermore, many Chinese troops are experienced veterans of the Second Sino-Japanese and Chinese Civil War. Although Western sources often see Chinese behavior as resulting purely from indoctrination or coercion, which did likely play a role, some Chinese soldiers are sincerely motivated by recent victories. Lika, a 23-year-old who'd been a soldier since age 16, recalls. We felt pretty confident because we'd just beaten the Kuomintang with all their support from the Americans. We expected to do the same to Syngman Rhee's people. We weren't very wrong. They were a pushover compared with the Japanese. Meanwhile, US morale plummets as they stick to their rigid training, which does not include all-around defense and relies heavily on vehicles. The result, by the end of 1950, is the complete collapse of a UN position north of the 38th parallel. British Private Albert Varley later recalls. It was a proper shambles, a right cock-up.
Yeah.
I learned that ChatGPT works best with detailed prompts, but I hate typing them. So instead, I dictate them using Whisper.
The winter conditions affect soldiers and refugees alike. Although the frozen Han River allows for withdrawal, it also limits Seoul's defense. Debate rages in UN capitals about whether they should leave Korea altogether. MacArthur requests Chinese nationalist troops from Taiwan to join UN forces and develops bombing lists for Chinese cities, including with atomic weapons. Truman turns down his requests, but with domestic and international prestige at stake, the US stays in Korea. There's also tension within the alliance, and some criticize MacArthur's command and inadequate American training. British General Sir Robert Landsberg reports home. The reason for this is primarily because of the American lack of determination and their inability to stand and fight. Their training is quite unsuited to that type of country or war, and, in spite of lessons learnt, they will not get clear of their vehicles. They've never studied or been taught defense. They appear only to have studied mechanized and mechanical advances at great speed. Americans feel very naked when anybody threatens their flank or rear. On December 23rd, General Walker dies in a traffic accident and is replaced by World War II U.S. Airborne Commander General Matthew Ridgway. A veteran of Sicily, Italy, and Normandy, Ridgway favors the offensive but admits the training problem. So he implements new training, including all-round defense and dismounted combat. But new methods take time. On January 3rd, UN forces leave Seoul for stronger positions 60 kilometers south. It's a success for communist forces, but China is exhausted. Its non-mechanized logistics, including porters and pack animals, struggle to maintain the offensive. Supplies are running low, and many Chinese troops depend on captured UN equipment and supplies. We quickly got used to American biscuits and rice, but we never cared for tomato juice. We were particularly glad to get carbines because we found rifles too heavy to carry. Without the American sleeping bags and overcoats we captured, I'm not sure we could have gone on. 2/3 of our casualties were from the cold that winter. By early 1951, roughly 486,000 Chinese and KPA forces face off against 365,000 UN troops. After containing a Chinese offensive in January, Ridgway goes over to the offensive in February and March. By March 15th, Operation Ripper recaptures Seoul, the 4th time it has changed hands in 10 months. Communist troops pull back to the 38th parallel. MacArthur now calls for resources for another massive push north, but there's little political will in the UN coalition, which mostly wants negotiations. To MacArthur, talks are unacceptable, and in early April, he makes unauthorized public statements favoring an attack on China. Privately, he also encourages using nuclear weapons to create an irradiated barrier along the Yalu. The Joint Chiefs of Staff refuse, and Truman is tired of his general's public criticism and escalatory strategy. On April 11th, Truman dismisses MacArthur and replaces him with Ridgway. The move gets a mixed response in South Korea, but relieves many UN allies. UN command orders Ridgway to hold the line along the 38th parallel in anticipation of a Chinese spring offensive. And on April 22nd,
Why didn't I only shielded? What?
Their biggest offensive yet, with the main attack aiming for Seoul. A significant force clashes against the British 29th Infantry Brigade on the Imjin River. Exposed on poorly prepared positions, British and supporting Belgian troops try to hold several hilltops against repeated Chinese assault. After British Commander Thomas Brodie describes the situation as, quote, a bit sticky, US 3rd Division Commander Major General Robert H. Soule orders the 29th Brigade to hold on. This is commonly cited as an example of cultural miscommunication. When Tom told Corps that his position was a bit sticky, they simply did not grasp that in the British Army parlance, that meant critical. Under frequent night attack, most British and Belgian units fall back. However, the Gloucestershire Regiment on Hill 235 becomes separated from the main force, and repeated attempts by Filipino and British tanks to reach them fail. Instead, US 1st Corps orders a general withdrawal along the entire UN line. British headquarters lets Gloucestershire Commander Lieutenant Colonel James Carn decide whether to break out or surrender. When British Centurion tanks arrive to cover the withdrawal, attacking Chinese and retreating British soldiers climb on top of them. The tanks then machine gun each other to clear the attackers. By April 25th, all UN forces except the Gloucestershire Regiment have withdrawn. The surviving Gloucesters now attempt to break out, but only the remains of D Company make it back to UN lines. Chinese troops overrun and capture the remaining Gloucesters. British casualties are around 1,000, although they claim to inflict 10,000.
Work. Pain in the apps. My files are in this app. My chat's in this app. Projects in that app.
Oh, wow. You're really working your ass off, Daniel.
You need ClickUp.
ClickUp is the AI-powered work platform that unifies your entire team and all your tools together in one place. No, not like that. It's a single place for your projects and docs, whiteboards and dashboards, calendars and chat, so your work goes from scattered to seamless. Plus, you get a fleet of AI agents to help you move at warp speed to get more done. This is the future of work. With ClickUp, it's like having your own assistant.
ClickUp, what should I focus on today? Okay, schedule time to work on these tasks.
I want an assistant.
We've been over this, Greg. Before ClickUp, your work apps couldn't talk to each other. With ClickUp, a project can go from a whiteboard to a doc to a task to your team's chat. That's because all your work tools speak the same language. Unlike you in the nightclub.
Thanks, I've been working out.
ClickUp turns your projects on autopilot with AI agents that assign and prioritize your team's tasks, so the work is visible and everyone knows what to do, even Randy. ClickUp is like your work bestie, who always has your back.
The intern is good for her.
ClickUp, what did I just agree to in that meeting?
The Battle of Imjin River is often understood in Britain as a heroic last stand that blunts the Chinese offensive. Others, though, describe it as a wasteful example of miscommunication, since the 29th Brigade could have fought from much stronger positions to its rear. Despite the Chinese success at Imjin, the spring offensive fails, marking a decisive moment in the war. Kim and Ri pushed their stronger allies for more offensives, but neither side will attempt another major offensive to reunify Korea. Instead, China and the UN settle in for a war of attrition and negotiations. Talks start on July 10, 1951, but they make little progress. UN negotiators claim the KPA and Chinese won't compromise on key issues such as ceasefire lines. By early August, the talking literally stops. On August 10th, negotiators just stare at each other for 2 hours and 11 minutes. By August 22nd, the talks are over. Meanwhile, fighting continues along a stalemated front line and in the air. The UN enjoyed air superiority in the opening days of the war. Piston-driven World War II planes like Mustangs, Corsairs, and Seafires quickly eliminate the small North Korean Air Force. After Chinese intervention, UN aircraft conduct interdiction airstrikes, but struggle against unmechanized Chinese logistics. Although the Soviet Union refuses to directly intervene, it does provide trainers, pilots, and aircraft, including its new MiG-15 jet fighter. Its appearance in November 1950 causes alarm in the US, who send their own fighter jets like F-80 Shooting Stars and F-86 Sabres. Both Soviet and UN pilots are under restrictions, though. Soviet pilots patrol the Yalu in what becomes known as MiG Alley, but have orders not to intercept UN aircraft unless attacked. Meanwhile, UN pilots aren't allowed to cross into Chinese airspace. Both sides break the rules, and soon jet-on-jet dogfights take place. Technologically, the MiG-15 is superior to early US jets like the F-80. It has a higher ceiling, tighter turn, and heavier armament. The F-86 Sabre is more of a match, especially at low altitude, but there aren't that many of them. A more important factor is pilot training. UN pilots, many with World War II experience, have a decisive edge, especially over Chinese and Korean pilots. Soviet pilots are also limited by communication issues. Often flying with Chinese or Korean wingmen, Soviet pilots rely on translated phrases written on clipboards. Although, as one veteran recalled, in combat, they simply shout in Russian. Overall, dogfights are rare, and although air-to-air tours do occur, it's hard to verify claims. The Soviet Union claims the first air-to-air jet kill on November 1st, with a MiG-15 downing an F-80. The US claimed the jet was downed by flak, and they say they scored the first jet kill on November 8th by an F-80C, or, alternatively, November 9th by a Navy F-9F Panther. Ultimately, UN pilots claim 792 MiGs shot down during the war. The Soviets say they downed 1,000 UN jet aircraft, although the actual figure is likely closer to 350. In any case, Soviet sources claim most UN air victories are against Chinese or Korean-flown MiGs, and Soviet pilots have a 2-to-1 kill advantage over the UN. Captain Nikolai Vorobyov recalls a victory.
The epic online action game War Thunder lets you dive into massive battles and experience the full power of legendary military vehicles. From World War II to the modern era, tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from different generations.
I leveled off behind the trailing Sabre and closed in to about 100 meters. The Sabre started banking right and I followed him. My third burst went to his right, and the fourth burst hit him when he flew into it. One 37mm cannon shell went into the tailpipe. Debris and wreckage sailed past me as the enemy plane caught fire and fell away. UN bombers like the B-29 are vulnerable to both communist jets and ground fire. The loss of 5 B-29s in August 1951 ends significant daytime bombing raids, although major bombing continues. The UN's Operation Strangle attempts to cut major Chinese supply routes from 1951 to 1952. UN Air Intelligence claims massive success at the cost of 343 aircraft, although Ridgway is skeptical. If all the enemy trucks you report as having been destroyed during the past 10 days or so were actual kills, then there would not be a truck left in all of Asia. But UN UN air superiority does mean ground forces experience no air attack, and UN helicopters, the first to be widely employed in warfare, can operate more freely. Models like the H-13 Sioux or H-19 Chickasaw are used for transport, observation, and medical evacuations to the new Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, or MASH. However, threats of ground fire, technical limitations, and inter-service rivalry for limited helicopters means most medevacs still arrive via ambulances. Although the latest aviation technology is in the air, on the ground the war is beginning to resemble World War I. Both sides build deep, elaborate trench systems and resort to attrition. One reason for the static front is the resumption of negotiations in October 1951. By November, both sides limit themselves to platoon-sized operations like trench raids, patrols, and repairing defenses along a fairly static front line. The Chinese do launch night attacks, but they struggle against improved UN training and positions. UN early warning outposts detect attacks, while searchlights review for cover of night. I had never seen such brilliance in my life. When they were turned on, the battlefield was not nearly as frightening for the men. They would look for an enemy on the move and then bring devastating firepower on the unwelcome visitors. Chinese trenches, vulnerable to air attack, often use camouflage and underground bunkers to protect massing troops and artillery. By early 1952, communist troop numbers increased to around 900,000, 200,000 more than the UN, and they've doubled their artillery compared to 1951. With conditions shifting from extreme cold in winter to sweltering heat in summer, frontline troops deal with frostbite, disease, and sagging morale. The U.S. point system, which rotates troops out after a certain period of service, also means U.S. combat experience drops as new troops arrive. Meanwhile, the Chinese and KPA leave their men in place. To improve experience, UN commanders plan to build offensives, which the Chinese vigorously counter. After UN forces establish a new series of outposts in summer 1952, the Chinese launch multiple counterattacks. One mountain ridge, nicknamed Old Baldy, sees extensive combat from June 1952, with parts of the position changing hands several times. Only in March 1953 do Chinese troops finally overrun a Colombian unit defending the position. 45% of US casualties occur in the stalemated phase of the war, and as troops continue to die on the front line, negotiations progress slowly. By early 1952, the UN is softening its negotiating position. Rhee continues to push for reunification, but receives little support. Meanwhile, China wants to demobilize its expensive army and conduct internal reforms. However, there remains one key problem: prisoners of war. UN nations want all prisoners returned, but some North Korean and Chinese prisoners don't want to return home. An April 1952 survey reveals only 70,000 of the 170,000 civil and military prisoners want to return to China or North Korea. China insists all prisoners be returned to avoid embarrassment. For President Truman, the memory of the Yalta Agreement, in which large numbers of Soviet prisoners were repatriated against their will, looms large. But in 1953, there are changes of leadership. President Dwight D. Eisenhower is elected in the US, and Stalin suddenly dies, thawing relations with the West. Eisenhower campaigned on his reputation as the victor of World War II, not on any policy regarding Korea, which was not a top voter concern. He wants to reduce the cost of his conventional forces, and increasing ROK forces in Korea and nuclear weapons are a way of doing this. In January 1953, the US tests tactical nuclear artillery, and word of the tests is leaked to the Chinese via Indian diplomats. The Americans hope to intimidate China, although it has little effect. In May, the US Joint Chiefs of Staff recommend nuclear strike options to break the deadlock. In March and April, Chinese troops launch their final major attack against UN positions. Colombian officer Alfredo Forero remembers the night of the Chinese attack. Tremendously heavy artillery and mortar fire fell on Old Baldy. The earth shook as if in an earthquake, accompanied by flashing and deafening explosions all around B Company's position. The fleeting silhouettes of men, weapons, and weakened fortifications seemed ghosts within the enemy bursts. Cries of anguish and agony mingled with our own and enemy machine gun rattle. Next to me, Corporal Ernesto Gonzalez fired his machine gun on an onslaught of Chinese who came upon us, when a bazooka shell hit him in the face, leaving his head dangling on his back. I thought I was living a nightmare or horror movie until new explosions on my bunker brought me back to reality. I encouraged my men, and I continued to communicate with machine guns and gave instructions for a corporal to take out the flamethrower and prepare himself to shoot the enemy when they appeared. As fighting increases around Pork Chop Hill, the UN also bombs North Korean infrastructure, including important dams and power plants. The fighting has little strategic value, except to gain an advantage in negotiations. By the time fighting dies down in June and July, negotiators are nearing a deal. Just how seriously Eisenhower considered nuclear options and how effective military coercion was in influencing China have been debated. It's likely that Soviet disengagement after Stalin's death, economic cost, nuclear threats, and the failed offensives influenced the Chinese position. On July 27, 1953, 3 of the 4 primary belligerents sign a peace treaty in a ceremony designed to not make any one side appear the victor. South Korea's Syngman Rhee only allows it to go ahead under US pressure, and he refuses to sign the armistice, meaning technically a state of war remains between North and South. When the ceasefire begins at 10 p.m., soldiers from both sides stream into no man's land. Lieutenant Chris Snyder of the Canadian Brigade recalls. The enemy all came out. My God, there were thousands of them, more than I ever thought possible, on every hill, standing, gazing at us. Some of our people thought they must have been brought forward specially to impress us. The agreement formalizes the border between North and South along the front lines and includes a 4-kilometer-wide demilitarization zone from which all weapons and troops must be withdrawn. China allows for all prisoners to decide where they want to go after being processed by a neutral committee, and 21,839 communist soldiers refused to return home. This figure does not include an additional 25,000 unilaterally released by Rhee in an attempt to stop negotiations. Of the 12,773 UN prisoners freed, 325 Koreans, 21 Americans, and 1 Briton choose to stay in North Korea. The US and UK governments blame communist brainwashing. As for military losses, South Korea suffers around 613,000 casualties, of which 138,000 are killed. US forces lose almost 37,000 killed, around 90% of non-Korean UN fatalities. 2,000 Commonwealth troops are killed, along with 2,000 soldiers from other UN allies, almost half of them Turkish. Estimating Chinese and North Korean casualties is harder. Initial American estimates of 1.5 million Chinese and North Korean war dead may be exaggerated, and losses are likely closer to 500,000. Civilian casualties are estimated to be at least around 1 million South and 1.5 million North Korean killed, wounded, and missing. The figure may be higher, and historians agree civilian deaths outstrip military ones. With such high casualties, it's been difficult for some to accept the inconclusive end of the Korean War. After the conflict, both sides present themselves as victors. But did anyone actually win the Korean War? One argument is that South Korea and the United Nations Command were victorious by repelling a northern invasion and preventing reunification under a communist dictatorship. Since they were the defenders initially, a return to the pre-war status quo was essentially a defensive victory. The South even gained some territory overall, while the North lost some. Furthermore, some South Korean historians argue the fact that 1.26 million northern civilians and soldiers fled or defected to the South, and that was a victory in the competition of systems and legitimacy. Critics of these arguments point out that although the initial South Korean and UN goal was survival, this shifted by October 1950. MacArthur and Rhee's invasion of the North would have almost certainly resulted in an attempt at reunification had it been successful. According to this argument, North Korea can also claim a defensive victory. Although the North's attempt at reunification failed, preventing its own destruction could be considered a much more important and existential goal.
Epas lang, tol. Dito ka na sa Buenas. Secure at legit. May 24/7 customer service pa. Kaya kung pagiging tunay lang, buenas na yan!
Can't trust your AI results? Let Borium sift through 170 million papers and find verified answers in seconds.
Others add that the North's territorial gains, including Kaesong, were more economically and strategically valuable, while the South largely gained sparsely populated mountain areas. Critics of a US victory also argue that the United States emerged from the war with its self-confidence and pride severely bruised. After total victory in World War II, Korea was an uncomfortable experience which had far-reaching consequences. Eisenhower's move to massive nuclear retaliation as the cornerstone of US security policy, although also driven by financial concerns, could be interpreted as a shift to the strategic defensive. Under Eisenhower, the US moves from a policy of proactively rolling back communism to containing it, as well as a shift from conventional to clandestine operations. That has led some to suggest that the Soviet Union gained the most from the war. Although it supported Kim's goal of reunification, it did so from a distance, and its overall investment in Korea in terms of material and prestige were low. Soviet confidence was intact and maybe even reinforced, including in Europe, where it intervened to crush uprisings in both East Germany in 1953 and Hungary in 1956. Chinese historians also point out Chinese gains from the Korean War. It cemented its relationship with the Soviet Union for a time, developed its great power status, and modernized its military, including tanks and an air force. Since China never explicitly intervened to reunify Korea, China can also argue to have achieved its primary strategic goal, preserving a friendly communist buffer state against US-aligned states in the Pacific. The Korean experience did not stop China from continuing to support Ho Chi Minh's communist forces fighting the French in Indochina, or sending captured US artillery to Viet Minh forces in 1953, artillery that would be decisive at the Battle of Dien Bien Phu. When France called on the US to officially intervene on their behalf, Eisenhower refused because he was afraid of Chinese intervention, though the US did provide France with intelligence, logistics, equipment, and financial support from 1950. Of course, this position has its opponents too. They say that just like the US, China shifted to a goal of reunification by late 1950, which ultimately failed, and that its other gains were not worth the high casualties. There's also an argument that Truman's decision to block the Taiwanese Straits saved Taiwan from invasion, ensuring the survival of Chiang Kai-shek's Nationalist Chinese Republic. This prevented the Communist Chinese from achieving a much more important strategic objective, ultimate victory in the Chinese Civil War. Even after the US 7th Fleet withdrew, China did not invade Taiwan, perhaps fearing US intervention. Other less discussed minor victors may be UN contributors like Turkey, Greece, Thailand, and the Philippines. With modest contributions, they earned a degree of gratitude from the major Western powers, which often paved the way for formal security guarantees. Turkey and Greece joined NATO in 1952, while the US oversaw the creation of SEATO in 1955, an ultimately failed version of the alliance in Southeast Asia. In the end, the result of the Korean War is inconclusive. Given the millions killed, it's understandable that all parties would try to claim some kind of victory, but these debates remain largely academic. What is less debatable is that the Korean War's impact resonates through the 20th century and up to today. One of the lasting legacies of the Korean War is the American test of tactical nuclear weapons and General MacArthur's idea to use nuclear weapons on China, which was ultimately avoided. However, this showed where the new Cold War between the superpowers was headed, and the potential of limitless nuclear energy wasn't just relevant for military application. Before his death, Joseph Stalin had accelerated the Soviet nuclear program, and the vision of atomic-powered communism lived on after him. If you're interested in this topic, we produced an entire documentary series from the first Soviet atom bomb to the atom cities like Pripyat and beyond. And where can you watch Red Atoms? On Nebula, a streaming platform we're building together with other creators, where we don't have to worry about advertising guidelines or the almighty algorithm. On Nebula, there's not just Red Atoms or our other exclusive World War II series, 16 Days in Berlin and Rhineland 45 in 4K resolution. You can also watch all our content there ad-free and earlier than on YouTube. And that's not just in your browser. Nebula is available on smartphones, Apple TV, Roku, and more. If you go to nebula.tv/realtimehistory, you can get an entire year of Nebula for just $30. And if you really want to support what we're doing on Nebula, the Nebula Lifetime membership is available again for $300. If you sign up at nebula.tv/realtimehistory, 1/3 of this money will directly support us here at Real Time History, and the rest will
June 22nd, 1941. German shells slam into the walls of Brest Fortress. Before daybreak, the barracks are left in ruins, and radios are left silent. Soldiers of the Red Army claw their way out of the dust, scrambling into shattered bunkers. They are surrounded, outgunned, and cut off with no orders, but they fight anyway. While these soldiers weather the onslaught of airstrikes, artillery, and flamethrowers, Soviet civilians carry ammunition to their aid, and nurses drag wounded defenders back from the fighting. Graffiti scrawled on fortress walls says it all. I'm dying, but I won't surrender. In the months leading up to June 1941, the Soviet Union appeared to be at peace with Nazi Germany. Both powers had signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact in August of 1939. Its secret protocols carved up Eastern Europe between them, while its public statement of non-aggression allowed the Germans to focus their war effort on the Western Allies. For Stalin, it was a strategic play. The pact caused dissent among the Western capitalists, weakening their cause. It also gave time for the USSR to further build up their power base as they moved beyond Poland to seize the Baltic states, Bessarabia, and northern Bukovina. The Red Army had dramatically expanded its borders, but it did so under a false sense of strategic security. Behind the scenes, intelligence reports revealed alarming news. Soviet agents, border guards, and even foreign diplomats warned that German forces were massing along the western frontier. Stalin was skeptical. Not only did he suspect that the British were spreading false reports to drag the USSR into the war, but he actually believed Hitler's assurances that the massive transfer of German troops to the Soviet border was done to avoid British aircraft. Even when the GRU and NKVD presented evidence of German troop concentrations and intercepted communications, he dismissed many of their claims. Hitler himself wrote to Stalin, telling him that if there were any provocations from the German side, the blame should fall on disloyal generals. Instead of responding with military force, Stalin should instead show restraint and contact German officials through diplomatic channels. Part of this disbelief in a German attack also stemmed from Stalin's deep mistrust of his own military intelligence. The Great Purge of the late 1930s had gutted the Red Army and state security groups. Thousands of experienced officers, including most of the senior command, had been removed, whether through dismissal, imprisonment, or even execution. By 1941, an astonishing 75% of Red Army officers had been in their posts for less than a year. Experience had been replaced by obedience and fear, as the cautious, disoriented military hierarchy became too afraid to report bad news if it risked upsetting Stalin. Adding to this were serious issues in Soviet deployment. The occupation of Poland and the Baltic states had moved their frontier nearly 160 to 402 kilometers, or 100 to 250 miles west. Many of the fortifications and defenses on the old border became ineffective, while Soviet divisions stationed in the new occupied territories were left dangerously exposed. Airfields, barracks, and command posts were vulnerable to immediate strikes because new defenses had been delayed or outright reversed. Worse still, the Red Army had no defense in depth. Instead of layering their forces with staggered fallback lines and strategic reserves, Many Soviet formations were deployed in a forward concentration near the border. It effectively meant that any German spearheads that broke through the initial defensive line would find little resistance behind it. These defensive hiccups were not seen as a major issue thanks to the Soviet doctrine of the time. The Red Army of 1941 was actually built for offense, since the prevailing view emphasized that any future war would involve overwhelming any neighboring countries they wished to subjugate. Much of this confidence came in the massive numbers of Soviet armor.
My dessert coffee?
Wow! New limited edition Copico Blanca Winter Blend.
Creamy Copico Blanca.
Brand new T-34 and KV tanks were also considered some of the best in the world. However, they only made up a small portion of the total Soviet armor. The vast majority of Red Army tanks consisted of obsolete, mechanically unreliable models like the T-26 and BT series. Many thousands of these tanks were crippled by a lack of radios, spare parts, recovery vehicles, and trained mechanics. Superior numbers meant little without logistics or an adequate support network. Similar issues also plagued the air fleet. On paper, Stalin's air force was the largest in the world, but this numerical superiority obscured a major problem. The backbone of its fighter fleet consisted of obsolete Polikarpov I-15 Chaika and L-16 Ishak aircraft, which performed well in the Spanish Civil War and against the Japanese at Khalkhin Gol, but were outclassed by the Luftwaffe's Messerschmitt Bf-109s. Modern replacements like the MiG-3 and Yak-1 were only just trickling into service, and their pilots were undertrained and underfamiliar with the new machines. Most importantly, thousands of these aircraft were concentrated on the exposed, unconcealed airfields packed against the German border, making them easy targets. Special thanks to today's sponsor, OpusClip, the #1 AI video editing tool that transforms your long-form content into shorts with just one click. Editing down a full video in short-form content can be time-consuming and expensive, but OpusClip makes it fast and easy by automating the short-form video workflow. From impressive auto-import features that can pull in your latest YouTube videos and instantly auto-edit them into social-ready clips, to new AI auto-subject tracking that automatically detects, tracks, and reframes your scene to make sure the object is always in the center. OpusClip is more than just a clipping tool, but a leading AI video editing platform that saves you time so you can focus on creating content and expanding your reach. It's also affordable, and I can't recommend it enough as a great tool for creators of all sizes who want to get the most out of their content. So, whether you're already a successful creator or have always wanted to start your own channel, start transforming your videos into moments with OpusClip by clicking our link in the description and use code HISTORY to get 1 week free and 50% off for 3 months on your subscription. On the dawn of June 22nd, 1941, the illusion of peace was finally shattered. Without warning, the Wehrmacht opened fire across a front stretching over 2,900 kilometers or 1,802 miles. Artillery began pouring down all across Soviet forward positions. Luftwaffe bombers flew over the border in vast waves. Airfields, barracks, and depots were all hit at once. In the words of one Soviet pilot, "I tossed aside a tent flap and saw planes with German crosses strafing the tents. Everyone leaped out and saw that there were killed and wounded in the neighboring tents. I pulled on my overall, grabbed my map case, and ran toward the hangar. The planes on watch, which had been lined up nicely, were already ablaze." Within that first day, the Soviet Air Force lost between 1,800 to 2,000 aircraft, with many of those lost still on the ground. The Red Army was caught in the open. Units were deployed close to the frontier without proper entrenchments or fallback plans. Communication lines were severed early, and headquarters struggled to understand what was happening, let alone respond to it. Entire divisions were left leaderless or surrounded before they could even assemble. At the top, silence. For nearly half a day, Stalin gave no formal orders. Despite weeks of warnings, Hitler's manipulation of his anti-capitalist paranoia led Stalin to believe that the incoming reports of German attacks were false flags meant to destabilize the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. On the front lines, there was no chance for officers to take the initiative, since the Soviet high command was purged years earlier. What remained was a cautious, fractured officer corps that hesitated to act without direction from above. As the invasion pushed the front lines further toward the Russian heartland, commanders were unsure whether to resist or await confirmation. Rodion Malinovsky, who served as a major general, recalled asking, "Could we open fire if the enemy invaded our territory?" To which the only answer was, "Do not succumb to provocation and do not open fire." Even with the chaos, pockets of Soviet resistance did emerge. One of the first roadblocks for the Germans came at the Brest Fortress in Belarus. Germany's 45th Infantry Division expected to seize the complex within hours. Instead, they found themselves locked in brutal close-quarters combat. Cut off and without orders, Soviet troops were joined by nurses and civilian family members as they turned the shattered fortress into a maze of improvised strongpoints. With no hope of relief, they held out against artillery, flamethrowers, and airstrikes for 8 days. Further north in Lithuania, the Soviet 2nd Tank Division rushed to counter the German 6th Panzer Division east of Rasenyi. Most were crushed quickly, but some of the heavier Russian tanks were able to bloody the smaller panzers. In one instance, a single KV-2 heavy tank managed to cut off a key German supply route, holding it alone for nearly 2 days. The KV's crewmen withstood everything, from anti-tank guns to artillery, and even satchel charges before the tank was finally knocked out. It was an isolated success, but it showed that Soviet armor could outmatch the Germans tactically when they were deployed in the right conditions.
The tech legend who's been right about everything from LinkedIn to AI just got voice pilled. And this is what he posted. If you use products like Whisper or ChatGPT Voice, you know what I mean. Voice is simply faster, more natural, and more flexible than typing. He said he's voice pilled, and I can see why. WhisperFlow delivers what Reed calls the future of AI interaction. Here's how it works.
Instead of typing, just talk. WhisperFlow cleans it up instantly.
Reed explains that voice is iterative by default. You stumble, you rephrase, you interrupt yourself. WhisperFlow handles all of that and turns it into perfect prompts wherever you're working.
Reed predicts we'll all be prompting AI more, and voice lets you add way more nuance and detail. Better prompts, better results. That's why he calls Flow's voice dictation a major step forward in human-computer interaction. If AI visionaries are raving about it, you should probably give it a try too. It's free. Get voice pilled with WhisperFlow today.
Back at the Kremlin, things remained eerily quiet. Hours after the invasion began, there was no formal directives from the top. Stalin was racked by indecision. Years of trusting Hitler's false reassurances and ignoring mounting intelligence had left him blindsided. For much of June 22nd, he was adamant that the massive invasion was merely a provocation by rogue German generals. He continued forbidding his commanders to cross the border and ordered them to avoid actions that could worsen the situation. As German divisions flooded in, Stalin was still trying to reach Berlin by telephone, convinced Hitler would rein in his army. Eventually, Stalin began sobering up to the reality of the situation, but he remained elusive to the Soviet public. It fell to Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov to speak for the state, announcing that the USSR was under attack during a radio broadcast on the afternoon of the 22nd. The next day, Stalin quietly convened the Politburo to issue his first concrete orders: the formation of the Stavka, the general headquarters, with Marshal Semyon Timoshenko as its head. Defensive lines were drawn. as the Soviet Union was now fully at war. Over the following weeks, the Soviet Western Front fought tooth and nail to delay the German blitzkrieg. But the haphazard nature of the Red Army's defense nearly led to a complete collapse of the entire front. Major encirclements at Białystok and Minsk saw 4 entire armies surrounded and cut off. By July 9th, more than 341,000 Soviet troops had been killed, missing, or captured, while materiel losses included thousands of tanks, guns, and aircraft. The situation wasn't any better in the south. In Ukraine, German and Romanian forces pushed deep toward the Dnieper River, leaving 2 more Soviet armies trapped in the Uman pocket by early August. Behind the front, the Luftwaffe was wreaking havoc on Soviet infrastructure. Factories, supply depots, and transport hubs were being hit hard by bombing sorties. Any railway lines that were still operable were clogged with retreating units, refugees, and wrecked equipment. Ammunition dumps and airfields had to be abandoned in haste. The scale of the disaster forced the state to begin a massive emergency response, as key factories were dismantled and loaded onto trains bound for the east. Even under German air attack, the Soviets began moving their industry piece by piece beyond the reach of the advancing front. With more distance between them and the front, Soviet industry could continue ramping up production of much-needed supplies, vehicles, and aircraft. Back at the Kremlin, the Soviet leadership was slowly recovering from its paralysis. After 10 days of public silence, Stalin finally emerged to address the nation in a radio broadcast on July 3rd. There was no more talk of diplomacy. Casting aside the formal language of the General Secretary, Stalin called on his fellow citizens to rise in defense of the motherland, to form partisan units behind enemy lines, and to prepare for a long, brutal war. A month later, Stalin discreetly assumed the role of Supreme Commander-in-Chief. As the Red Army won more victories on the front, Stalin's position became more publicized. As the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, he was placing the defense of the entire USSR squarely on his shoulders. By mid-July, the Red Army was left beaten and bloody, but not broken. As German forces pushed toward Moscow, the Soviets managed to consolidate the front enough to delay their advance at Smolensk. Since the beginning of July, Marshal Timoshenko poured every resource he had into blunting the German spearhead. Eventually, Army Group Center was able to surround the city and many Soviet field armies by the end of the month. But it came at a cost. Not only did a large number of Red Army troops from the 19th and 20th Armies manage to escape back to Soviet lines, the delayed German victory had completely disrupted their deadlines for Barbarossa, putting their already fragile logistics in peril. By late August, the Red Army was ready to strike back. West of Smolensk, Soviet forces under General Georgy Zhukov launched a successful counterattack near the town of Yelnya. It cost many lives, and the strategic gains amounted to little, but it was an important morale boost for the Red Army. Yelnya was the first time that Soviet troops had forced the Germans to retreat. While battles continued to rage across the main front, resistance was also forming across the occupied territories. In the forests and villages of Belarus, Ukraine, and Western Russia, many isolated soldiers, political officers, and civilians began to organize. With few weapons and little support, these early partisan bands struck rail lines, ambushed convoys, and launched assassinations whenever they could, before vanishing into the trees. Later on in the summer, coordination with the NKVD began to improve, as partisan detachments behind enemy lines became more structured and tied closer to wider NKVD operations. While they didn't stop the German invasion, partisan activities did force the Wehrmacht and Waffen-SS to divert precious resources to these territories, making their supply situation even worse. Other sectors of Soviet intelligence were also quietly at work. NKVD cryptanalysts under Sergei Tolstoy had successfully decrypted Japanese diplomatic traffic, which contributed to the later assessment that Japan would not attack the USSR. Meanwhile, Red Army codebreakers began intercepting messages exchanged between the Romanian High Command and General Erich von Manstein's forces in the Ukraine, giving them a wider picture of the strategic situation. By the late summer of 1941, Soviet commanders on the front lines reported an unexpected shift in German activity. Armored formations that were supposed to be gunning straight for Moscow were veering north and south. To the Soviet High Command, it became clear that the Germans were no longer concentrating solely on the Central Front. In the south, Red Army commanders warned of a massive buildup aimed at Kiev, but Stalin refused to authorize a withdrawal. Instead, the Southwestern Front endured a valiant but ultimately futile defense of Ukraine that left them encircled and destroyed. Total casualties amounted to nearly 760,000 men, with over 486,000 of those left killed or missing. The Southwestern Front's
I still have
commander,
2 concurrent viewers?
General
No.
Mikhail Kirpanos, also perished in the fighting.
No way.
Despite these terrible losses, the delay was not without consequences for the enemy. While the front collapsed in Ukraine, the central sector remained quiet. This central pause gave the Soviets time to form new armies, reposition defenses, and continue the process of industrial evacuation. To the north, the defenders of Leningrad were holding the line against the combined forces of Army Group North and the Finnish Defense Forces in Karelia, who had reached the outskirts by September. Germany's 4th Panzer Group spearheaded the assault, but failed to reach any further than the outskirts. Instead, the Wehrmacht encircled Leningrad, placing the entire city under a siege that would last 872 days. Within the city itself, the Red Army defenders established a perimeter of resistance that was reinforced by naval units from the Baltic and over 135,000 members of the People's Militia, ordinary volunteers who were handed rifles and sent to man the defenses. The remaining civilians, still trapped in the city, soon began to suffer immensely, as starvation, bombardment, and disease claimed hundreds and later thousands of lives per day. Due to the encirclement, relief
Yo, what is
efforts
up,
were extremely
Shedletsky
difficult.
1337?
But Soviet forces managed
I'm gonna turn off this because I want to lock in. Alright. What up? What is up? I've just been grinding Minecraft after PvP. Efficiency 4. Okay. I should grab another pickaxe. I should enchant my sword. Nope, never mind. Would be tragic. Enchant my armor, I think. I love Minecraft and Bed Wars, not gonna lie. Oh, that's cool. Do you know how to play 1.9 PvP? I don't have the stuff I need. Bucket of axolotl. I need to go on a mining trip. Need my horse as well. Whoops. Oh, why were you bored about it? It's good to develop your skill, reaction time, and everything. Even I don't quit. Oh, I don't have a water bucket. I have using Hannah and Bed Wars. Oh, nice. You should go back to the game. Honestly, I want the community to grow again. It's not really boring. It's more of I don't know, competitive playing, I think. But you have to find the purpose in games, so I guess that's reasonable. Cassidy hasn't fixed that crater yet. Dang. Wow. Lodge is pretty cool. There's my bucket of cod. Cassidy of redstone. There's the frog. Oh, I didn't get my horse, bruh. I got 2 and Donut SMP and I should try out Donut SMP sometime. I quit Hypixel. And that's reasonable. What are you doing now? If you quit those games. I'm genuinely curious. Where's my horse? Oh, there's my horse. Forsaken content. That's good. We should do like a collab on Bed Wars or something. Like your return to Bed Wars. Would be really cool. There's a horse. It's mine. Thank you. There's a creeper there. I'm new to uploading. I can keep uploading. If you it takes dedication and community and creativity to have a place in community, you know. All right, I got my horse. I got the horses. I'm mobile, so I know how to edit. You can use CapCut. CapCut is it's it's pay to use, but it gets the job done, I guess. I used to use KineMaster, but I think it's obsolete for me now. Right, going to the village. Sir, go to the. Alright, the villagers are sealed. It's not duplicating. Not forcing you to play, I mean, if you want. I play Forge because it's high quality. Too, just in Roblox though. What's Forge? I don't know what Forge is. Sorry. Oh, I almost died. Just use a shield. Yeah, I am using a shield. We won't get damage. I know. Don't worry about me. I got this. Oh, someone's above me. But the lag makes it so that shields sometimes won't deflect damage. I'm having a redstone shortage. No, use it for like fireballs, creepers. Yeah, I don't use shields against creepers because, well, I generally just want to kill them for the gunpowder. I'm stockpiling my gunpowder so that I can make TNT. I just don't have enough sand. What do I do? Yeah. Wanna join the server? Server's pretty fun. I mean, we have to meet up like in another server or something, but we still can. Okay. Let's see, where is a good cave? Down here looks cool. Hmm. We should get a lodestone. Alright, have a bed, have food, have wood. There you go. I don't have a fortune pick. I need a fortune pick. I almost broke my arm before. Why? Tell me why ain't nothing but a heartache. It's so risky. Ooh, not bad. Still not what I was looking for though. It's okay. I need redstone. Where's my horse? I'll put my horse again. I jumped from my 8th server home and crashed my arm. Got the cast, I guess. It's okay. At least you learn from your mistake, right? Hope you did. Do my homework after this. Then I'm done for the day. I'm gonna pass out in bed. How did my horse reach here? Or is that just 2? Huh? Didn't have armor. There's my horse. There's my failed project. Let's go ahead and I reached that so quickly. I didn't think it'd be this quick. A short ride from the horse. No loot. It's all right. Oh, we're there. I don't want to get jumped. Oh, nope. You ain't dying on me. Right. So we're gonna be. There's Ava's parrot. I haven't gotten down it. It's okay. Creepers. Sometimes I can't kill them. So yeah. Oh, nah. Play Team Fortress 2? I don't play Team Fortress 2, my brother does. You mine in deep slate. Oh! Mind if I do? It's a lot of coal. Rico. Playing Roblox right now. 15 or 13 plus. Oh, it's that age estimation thing, is it? Something? I forgot. Okay, it's a good sign. Sal has to go. Oh no. The long, long time. Don't die to lava or you'll burn. I mean, yeah, I will. What happened to the lava? I thought it. Huh? It's confusing. It's disappearing though, so not to worry. Oh, diamonds. Cool. Right, redstone. Hunting down redstone right now. My base got Grifton Donut, rip. And I don't have water anymore. Wow, this is steep. There's level 30. $14. Ah, I didn't know what I just did. Ooh. Oh. Yes, sir. Yeah, I don't mind more waystones. Why does it feel like a large army's brewing? Nice. Second one. Oh. Why does no one watch your content? I mean, it's good and better than mine. I don't know. I think it's just like me being repetitive and stuff. Maybe I'm in the wrong fandom, and I think I just don't have any dedicated time to content because I'm a student person. I'm a dedicated student as well, so I can't do both at the same time while not having pressure. It's okay though. I have dreams. I stay committed. Okay, let's get out of here. Let's get this creeper. Oh, hello. Ooh, you came so quick. Who's shooting? That was close. It was alright. Got him. It's a cool cave. It's like 400 in here. Whoa. Shooting up that ridge. Ooh. What is up, Ashton? Welcome. Oh. Wait, this is the... Wow, thanks so much. Thanks for complimenting on my videos, bro. Really appreciate it while I'm here. I'm above ground. I don't know where I am. Only a few meters away from my horse, I think. Possibly. There he is. Really good mine. The reservoir. I said that too. Alright. Going back to the village. Got a lot of stuff. Whoops. Ah! That was a shame. No. Oh, that worked? Now I am here. Should put my horse over here. Alright. We also have a lodestone here, so. Wait for that to smell. Oh, I have a blast furnace. What am I doing? Yeah, sure. Ask that question. When did you start content? 2016. But it was like uncommitted parts. It's like part of most of it. It's really uncommitted. So didn't know about like the content, how to do content and stuff. The usual. Yeah. A lot more cobblestone now. I'm still rolling on. I still have that dream. I still got that dog in me. Okay. And I didn't buy stuff yet. Where did I put my gravel? Yeah, they're cooking. It's my doggo. Been with me a lot. A lot of beds. It's that thing again where it doesn't. Guess my age. You're probably like 13. It's like initial guess. I didn't actually know. What? He escaped! It's crazy. I keep some of my emotes here? No, I did not. No. On the pickaxe. Started my YouTube when I was 8 and deleted my vids and came back to content. I think I started at 6. Or no. Or 7. 6 or 7. Yeah, I know. Meme. Should remove this just in case any zombie tries. A little sneaky. Alright, where's my... I'm gonna grindstone this. Yeah. Fortune! Let's go. Yes. Yes, sir. Pretty good. Pretty good. Dude, it's been like 4 days since my mom and arrived. What's up with that? Alright, and now I can knockback 2. Knockback 2 sucks on a sword, honestly. Efficiency 4. Oh, shoot! What's this now? Okay. Unbreaking 3, not bad. I like my axe now. Pretty good, pretty good. Use this. I can... Fortune. Oh man. 11. 19. Yep, I have efficiency 5 and stuff. We're rolling. I want to make a little something. Because my brother had a Cebu City Olympics. Oh! That sounds pretty cool. Alright. Not done cooking yet. What's next? Do I have that plugin? Files. Timber vein miner. String dupers return. Let's go. Alright. So yeah, we are Filipinos by the way. Nice. Me too. So. Alright. Let's try to make a string duper, shall we? I wanna make string duper.
When you're in the mood.
Here's how to build a super
Obviously, you would need cobblestone. Next is another bucket of water. Bucket of axolotl, but that's not it. Let's just get 4 of those. Get our tripwire hooks. Some 2. Make shears. Bring in a bunch of chests. 7 chests. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Also have to have another chest. Like 4 hoppers. Trap chests. No, just regular chests. Then no lever. Four by six area. This looks like a good area. Face facing south. Alright, I'm facing south. Oh, I accidentally left that out. Oh, I made it wrong. I made it like one step. I'm sure it'll be fine. Oh, do I have to shift? Dang it, didn't work. Yeah, it didn't work. Seems like this Whereas, can I just like definitely cannot. I am facing east direction. Doesn't work. I installed a plugin to make it return for some reason, and it for some reason doesn't work. Yeah, that's doomed. Well, I'll check out the plugin. Yeah, it doesn't return that way. Ugh. Make an SMP, not gonna lie. This is an SMP. Just no one is here though. I don't know how to do that. Well, doesn't work because it's 1.29.10. I installed a plugin to make it work again, but it didn't work, so. It's alright. Just gonna restore all that stuff. Just type in my YouTube username, it's just the same. Newest mentor, just like my YouTube username. Quick recap of the plot. Next up. Wait, I didn't hear that. Yeah. I'm gonna try out a new mod that makes it so that it spawns a zombie apocalypse every night. Alright, I'm gonna leave now. Yeah? What? I don't know, I was on the computer. I just finished.